friends, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all doing really well on this Sunday morning, and we're gonna get into my March wrap-up today. So we're into April now, so I hope you guys are all having a great reading month and you have some awesome books coming up on your TBRs. I did want to mention, because I don't think I've mentioned it yet on the channel, that Kelsey over at Slime and Slashers is running a really great read and watch-a-thon throughout April, and she's calling it Old School April, and she's put a ton of work into this, and it's a really fantastic idea. I'm watching tons and tons of old school movies, as well as trying to work in some vintage books as well. So go on over and check out Kelsey at Slime and Slashers and get in on this amazing readathon that she's put together. So I'll leave a link to her channel below. I'm sure most of you are already following her, but if you're not, please go over and check her out. And she has lots of stuff over on her Instagram as well for this. So like I said, I'm personally going to be watching a lot of movies, old school movies, throughout April. So I'll do a wrap up towards the end of the month, and I have a tag coming up that's kind of old school vibes that Kelsey also came up with. So lots and lots of stuff coming up in April. It's also halfway to Halloween, so all of us Halloween freaks out there are super excited, because it gives us kind of an opportunity to get our Halloween on in the middle of the year. And of course, now we can start looking forward to the countdown to actual Halloween. So fantastic. And before I get into the wrap up, I just wanted to do a quick follow-up on my video from yesterday, which is something that I don't usually do, but I felt like I really needed to say something in that case. But just an update that publisher, it was Silver Shamrock Publishing, has now decided to close after the backlash they received over this new book coming out. And I wanted to say thank you to everyone who commented, and you know, we had great discussions and great ideas come up out of that video, so I'm glad I did it. And we have some fantastic people here on the channel and in this community. But one thing that I did want to say, because I said in the video that I was very saddened when I saw that some of my colleagues and friends here on BookTube had liked the post that the publisher had put out. And someone who is very wise and I really look up to in this community reminded me that sometimes when we're scrolling through Instagram, we don't read the full post before putting a like on it. And I think in the case of a lot of people in this community, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that that was exactly what happened there, because I would hate to think that anyone in this community would put their support behind a book like this. And so I really think that that was the case there, that people were just, you know, probably saw the picture and didn't read the full post. And that's something that I try to be really careful of on Instagram, is that, you know, if I'm going to put a like on something, to read the whole thing before I actually like it, unless it's somebody that I know really well. So gonna give them the benefit of the doubt of that, and it's kind of restored my faith in this community just that much more. So that's enough of that. I'm not giving that any more energy. And after I shoot this video, it's very early, I believe it's only about 6:30 here on Sunday morning. So after I shoot this video, I'm actually going to spend the rest of the day meditating and trying to cleanse myself and my house of all of the negative energy and the disjointness in my soul that I felt over the past couple of days. So just very quickly, I wanted to say thank you for such a positive and constructive response on that video. I really did appreciate it. So now getting into my March wrap up. So March was kind of a weird month. I had 2 DNFs, so we'll talk about those first. I had some great reads, I had some not so great reads, and then like the first few weeks of March, I was reading constantly. I was blowing through books like every 2 to 3 days, and all I was doing was reading. And then it just kind of fell flat after a while, and I've been nursing the same book for like the past 2 weeks. So kind of a weird month, but I think there's been a lot going on in the world, and there's a lot going on in my adult job as well. We've been working on this really big project for literally like the past 6 months. We started in October, and it's been pedal to the metal, and we're down to the last couple of weeks before this kind of comes to fruition and it's all done. So I think I've been putting a lot of energy into that and I'm feeling a little bit burnt out. So good thing is not this week coming, but next week, so the week of Good Friday, I am taking a week off from work. So we're going to be working on the bookshelves and doing lots of reading and just trying to recoup a little bit from just overload and burnout. So yeah, it was kind of a weird reading month, but surprisingly I still did read a lot of books. So first off, with the 2 DNFs, one is very surprising for me and probably is going to be really surprising for the rest of you. But the other one was Face the Night by Alan Listufka, which was in my March most anticipated books. So I thought this sounded so fantastic, but I wasn't prepared for domestic strife and kind of domestic horror going on, bad relationships, people stuck in abusive relationships. And funny enough, the 2 DNFs that I had this month were basically for the same reason. So personally, I have gone through a lot of domestic strife myself in a previous marriage, and it's had a lasting legacy on me. So anytime that I'm reading a book and it has a lot of domestic abuse and, you know, intimate partner violence and stuff like that, I find it very, very hard to read. And I try to kind of force myself to stay with it in the past, but you know, I've just come to the realization that if something is truly bothering me and it's reminding of things from my own past to the point where I'm having nightmares and all of that, and things are kind of creeping up in my psyche, like I'm just putting that out of my space, absolutely putting it out of my space, and I don't want to have anything to do with it. So unfortunately, I DNF'd this book fairly early on. It hadn't even gotten into the meat and bones of the story because I couldn't handle the domestic strife that was kind of a current that was running through this book. So I DNF'd that one. The other one, so I had that one as a review copy from NetGalley, so I had to go in and tell them the reason I DNF'd. And then the other book is Sundial by Katrina Ward, and a lot of you are probably going to be surprised, and I was very surprised too, that I DNF'd this book as well quite early on. And I was reading this on audiobook, just kind of while I was putzing around the house doing chores and stuff like that. And again, it hadn't even gotten into the meat and bones really of the story, and I had to put it down because this was another situation where there was intimate partner violence, coercive control, just constant bickering and backbiting, and like a husband and wife who were literally trying to destroy each other. That was kind of the whole first part of the book. And I couldn't do it just because it was bringing up a lot of things in my own psyche. Some of you know I still do suffer from PTSD from that previous situation. So again, I put it down. I was like, I can't do this. And it's kind of sad because I loved The Last House on Needless Street by Katrina Ward so much, and she's such a talented author, but just with the subject matter, I just kind of had to put it down. So unfortunately, I'm not going to get to experience her fantastic writing again, so I will have to live vicariously through other people's reviews. And it's very rare that I do have 2 DNFs in the run of a month, but in this case, those books at the very beginning of the books were very similar, so I had to put them down for the same reason. I also had a 1-star read this month, and the only reason why I gave it 1 star was because I had to give it a star rating. I really didn't enjoy it. It's called I Am Margaret Moore by Hannah Capin, and this book was another one that I received for review from NetGalley. And from the description, it was about this group of girls who were going to basically a summer camp, but it was nautical themed. So they do a lot of sailing. So it's basically like a naval school. And it says in the synopsis actually that it has the tests of sisterhood and truth. And I was expecting, you know, one of those summertime, summer camp sort of horrors, and it kind of had like a murder mystery running through it. So I was really hoping for a lighthearted, fast-paced summer horror, was what I was expecting, and that's not at all what I got. So First of all, the author's writing style was not for me at all. It was kind of a lyrical style, and it seemed really overly pretentious. It seemed like she was making the book purposely hard to read. That's just how, that was just my take on it. And it was constantly bouncing back and forth between timelines, which I really hate. And it didn't have like any title headers or anything. So like some books that you read, it'll say like, okay, 1992 and then 1993, and it's laid out very well. But this was like, well, in the previous summer this happened, but the summer before that this happened, and then in the previous summer this happened, and now this is happening. So it was very convoluted. I had to work very hard to try to stay with this book, and the only reason why I kept reading it was because I wanted to get to the reveal, basically, and because I didn't want to have another DNF in my NetGalley score. So I stuck with it. I read it. I hated it. There was very little character development, and it was, like I said, the whole first half of the book was this bouncing back and forth between timelines. It was very convoluted. There was no organization whatsoever. I didn't feel any connection to the characters. I didn't feel any connection to this nautical school. And I felt like you had to have almost a background in how those schools worked to really be able to fully comprehend what was going on in the story. So the whole thing was very hard to read. It was very disorganized. So I gave it 1 star, and I gave a very honest review back to the publisher. So that style of writing might be for some people, but I can't see it being a very easy read for anyone, honestly. So that's my honest opinion on I Am Margaret Moore by Hannah Capin. The next book I read was Ghost of a Promise by Kelly Moran, and this is book 1 in a series. And funny enough, this is a kind of paranormal romance, and I knew there was going to be romance in this story, but I wasn't sure to what degree. So this was kind of a funny one for me. I went into it and I was like, I don't know. I don't know if this is going to be like nauseating amounts of romance, but the actual paranormal story and the haunted house story that was at the center of it really had me drawn in, and I really wanted to read it. So I got a review copy, and this book was good. It was okay. So basically we're following this young girl, and she inherits, like a lot of these books, she inherits her great aunt's mansion, and she knows that she is going to inherit the mansion. So when her aunt dies, she goes in for a will reading by the lawyer, and she's very shocked to learn that she can move into the house, but she only has a short period of time to figure out the mystery behind the haunting and behind something that had happened previously with previous owners of this home. And the house is now extremely haunted. And if she can't figure it out, then the house is then going to basically go to the historical society and become like a historical home. So this girl is very, very attached to this home. She's known her whole life that she was supposed to own this house, and now there's this whole caveat there that she has to figure out this mystery. So you can see why I was kind of interested in reading this. So she actually hires a paranormal investigative team to come in, and there's kind of like this spark of attraction between her and the guy that's the lead investigator of this paranormal group. So for the paranormal story itself, I really enjoyed it. It had lots of spooky twists and turns, and the paranormal group, it went into explaining like the different types of equipment that they were using, and they weren't these silly kind of investigators who were just beating on the walls and stuff. Like, they were doing a scientific investigation. I really enjoyed that because I do like that aspect of the ghost hunter kind of shows and stuff like that that are out right now. So the actual paranormal story I thought was really great. The haunted house was really great, but it did have quite a high level of romance, which we all know my thoughts on romance. It's not for me. But interestingly enough, and this is why I stuck with it, is that the romance that was happening between these two characters is wound into the fabric of the paranormal story and the haunted house. So I thought that was really interesting. The only thing that I didn't like about it was like every page or every other page there was this like cheesy romance content. Like the girl would be talking and then we would hear like the guy saying to himself, oh, she has such beautiful lips. I wish she would just keep talking forever. She has such beautiful lips. Or like something like that. It's just something stupid. And so I gave this book 3.5 stars. I thought it was okay. I thought the haunted house was good. If you can tolerate and stomach the romance aspect, maybe check this one out. Like I said, the paranormal story was behind it all was pretty cool. I'm not going to be continuing on with the other books in this series because they are very heavy in romance, but this one was okay. I have to say that I did enjoy it. And another thriller type book that is kind of highly anticipated, I've heard it on a couple of people's channels and some posts on Instagram and stuff, and that is Beneath the Stairs by Jennifer Fawcett. And this one is another sort of haunted house type thriller story. And this one, I had such high hopes for it. Unfortunately, it kind of fell flat. So here we're following this woman who, when she was younger, she had friends and they were living in their hometown, and there was this abandoned old home that they went into, and the place is very spooky and there's something in the basement. I'll just leave it at that. There's something in the basement, and then the girls were playing around and one of them shut the door of the basement. The other one was stuck down there and she was super scared, and something happened to her when she was down there. When she came out, she was never the same after. She was completely changed. So this is very much, on the one hand, a coming of age story with these girls and what was happening back in the 1990s. Yeah, it was the 90s, because I believe the girls were born in 84. So what was happening back in the 90s, so very, very much a coming of age story. And then the other half of the story, or the other point of view, is this girl has now grown up, she's moved away, and she learns that the friend that she was playing around with and locked her in the basement has actually been obsessed with the house. She's gone back to the house and she tried to commit suicide in the basement. So she goes back to her own hometown and she tries to figure out what the heck is going on with this house, and it is a murder house. So of course everyone knows my love of murder house stories, and the synopsis of this book just sounds so great. It is so great. But there were a few things in the plot that were kind of fantastical. Like, it was kind of hard to believe. It was way too long. It really, really, really needed to be cut down quite a bit. And it just kind of fell flat. It just didn't work out in the end. Some of the storylines, like this book had a ton of like subplots and stuff going on, and it's like, okay, out of the 8 plots that you had going on and views and things going on with different people, like you could have cut down at least half of those and stuck to the main part of the story. And the whole thing, and I've said this before with a thriller, is it's supposed to be thrilling, it's supposed to be fast-paced, it's supposed to be page-turning, and it wasn't, because it was far too long and there was far too much going on. So unfortunately that one kind of fell flat as well. I gave that one 2 stars. So that one, I read that one, and then I Am Margaret Moore kind of back to back, and it put me in a little bit of a slump. But fortunately I did pick up a couple of more books in the month before that slump kind of set in. So next I read, The Merciless by Danielle Vega. So The Merciless 1. So this is it here. I did have it in physical copy, and I do have the rest of the series on the shelf. So I've heard so much about this book, and I've had it sitting on my shelf for like a year and a half. And it pretty much everyone who reads this book is, you know, gives it high star ratings and they say it's great. And so I finally picked it up. And I was a little bit skeptical at the beginning, because the girls are trying to, there's a group of girls in high school and they're trying to exorcise one of their fellow classmates who they believe is possessed. And this book, like, they're basically torturing this girl It's crazy. They like lock her up in this house and nobody is allowed out, and the girl who's leading all of this is a little crazy, and things get out of hand, and it goes to places that I didn't think it would. Like, this is like a YA book, and it's pretty brutal. And I was starting to think, as I was reading kind of the first half or the first third of the book, that is this all it's gonna be? That it's just, the whole thing is they're just gonna, you know, burn her with candles and stuff. But then the story really starts to develop, and it moves very quickly. So the last part of where they have this girl locked up and then what happens afterwards is insane. I thought this book was so good. I didn't see it coming. I didn't see what was going to happen at all, and it got, like I said, it got a little crazy, and I couldn't read it fast enough. Like, there was some parts where I was reading it and I was skimming because I wanted to get to the next point, and I had to force myself to go back and make sure I didn't miss anything. I gave this a full 5 stars. I thought it was fantastic. From what I hear, the rest of the series is not as good as this first one, but this is a doozy, and even if I don't read the rest of the books, I'm so happy I picked this one up. So if you've been hearing about The Merciless and you haven't picked it up yet, I would highly suggest it. And I mean, the cover is just beautiful, and it's so funny because it's, you know, this bubblegum pink cover, and it has such torturous stuff going on inside of it. So really enjoyed this one. Thoroughly highly recommend it. Like I said, I gave it a full 5 stars. So I haven't picked up the rest of the series. I'll probably leave them for a little while and move on to something else and just go back to it, but super good. So pleased with this one. Next up, I read The Ravenous Dead by Darcy Coates, and this is the Gravekeeper series number 2. So this is the follow-up to The Whispering Dead. So I enjoyed The Whispering Dead, the first one. I thought it was okay. Wasn't anything fantastic, but I enjoyed it enough to pick up the second book. And the second book, if you've read the first book and, you know, kind of thought that it was around a 3-star read, the second book is where this story really starts to come into its own. I really liked the premise of this one, and Kira is starting to come into her abilities as a psychic, and I found this story just flowed a lot better. It was super good, and I loved the idea of what was going on with the ghosts in the graveyard, and like I said, her coming into her abilities and what she was able to do. And then of course we're trying to learn a little bit about her past as well, so there's kind of a part of the book that's pretty fast moving, and it, you know, gets all of these questions going in your mind, and I thought it was fantastic. The only thing that I'm finding with Darcy Coates' writing is that it's very formulaic, and I'd kind of like to see her break out of that formula a little bit, because I can kind of judge when things are going to happen at each point in her book. And maybe this is why she's able to bang out so many of them, is because she knows her formula very well, and she just puts in different ideas. So I would kind of like to see her break out of that formula for the third book, but we'll have to wait and see. It's going to be a full year before the next one comes out. So, but if you read The Whispering Dead and you want to continue on with the series, I highly recommend that you do. I really enjoy this book, and I gave it 4.5 stars. And the next audiobook that I read was a true crime. So I read Unsolved Child Murders, 18 American Cases from 1956 to 1998 by Emily G. Thompson. And this book was okay. I gave it 3 stars. Obviously this has to do with unsolved cases, and a lot of things that I like about true crime is the science and the investigation that it takes to try to crack a case. And obviously that aspect wasn't in these stories. They were just really sad stories. Some of them I've heard before, and some of them were just very tragic, and there's no, like, nothing comes to fruition because it's missing children, missing and murdered children. The only thing that I didn't like about it was the narrator wasn't great. So I mean, if you see it on Audible and you want to go ahead and pick it up, I believe it might be in the free catalog. I still recommend that you do if you like true crime, but again, it doesn't have that it doesn't have that closure to any of these stories, and the narrator isn't great, but I still gave it 3 stars. It was just something for me to have on while I was washing dishes and, you know, putzing around the house. And the last book that I read in March, because I'm still nursing the one that I started 2 weeks ago, was The Babysitter's Coven by Kate Williams. So this is the first in a series, and it follows these girls that are babysitters, but they have other things that are going on, and it has this whole secret society, secret identity kind of thing going on. And I really liked this book. What did I give this? I gave it 4 stars. I really liked this book. It was well written. It was enjoyable. I liked the whole idea of, you know, what was going on with these babysitters. And of course, this is part of a series, so the story continues after this one. Haven't picked up the other ones yet. But what I really liked about this is that the author's humor really comes through in this, like, heavily, and I was smiling and laughing the whole time I was reading it. I'm really glad I picked it up because, like I said, after having a few DNFs and a couple of low-rated books, it was really great just to pick up something that was light and fun, and it was absolutely hilarious. I love that kind of really humorous, partly sarcastic writing style, and this really had it. I would highly recommend, if you're into young adults, kind of light and airy babysitters club sort of books, that you pick this one up. It does have some occult wound in there, and I really enjoyed that fact. So yeah, I mean, I will continue on with the series, I think, but would still highly recommend you pick up this one if you just need something light and airy and fun and funny. So there you guys go. That's everything I read in March. Let me know down below if you guys have read any of these books. What did you think of Sundial? Did you finish it? Am I missing out? I probably won't pick it up again, but, you know, I'll live vicariously through everyone else. Make sure you follow the link down below to KELSI'S Old School April Read and Watchathon. I think that's going to be a really, really fun time. And until next time, stay spooky, everybody. Bye.